A rancher lived alone for a decade, 10 long years of silence, solitude, and self-imposed exile. Malachi Thorne had locked himself away from the world, and especially from people. Love, relationships, he'd buried that part of himself deep and swore it'd stay that way. But then one stormy night, that all changed. It started with a sound. Not thunder, not the wind, but something else. A low, broken sob being carried across the valley by the storm. Malachi stepped out onto his porch, coffee mug still warm in hand, and followed the sound with his eyes. That's when he saw her. She looked like something out of a fever dream, slumped on his steps, dressed in what used to be a wedding gown, soaked through to the bone. The white silk clung to her like a second skin, streaked with mud and rain, torn lace dragging behind her like a memory too heavy to carry. She didn't move. For a second, he thought she might be dead. He could have walked back inside, pretended she wasn't there. But something about her, the bruises on her wrist, barely visible under the mud and shredded lace, Malachi had seen marks like that before, back when he still wore a badge and believed the law could fix things. With a quiet curse, he set down his coffee and knelt beside her, the rain soaking through his jeans. She was breathing, barely. Shallow gasps that fogged in the cold air. Her face was pale, lips slightly parted, dark hair plastered to her cheeks. Even unconscious, she looked terrified. Malachi recognized that look. It was the same one he'd seen in the mirror the day he found his wife in another man's bed. "Ma'am?" His voice came out rough, dry from disuse. No response. The storm raged louder, lightning flashing across the sky like gunfire. Malachi glanced at his warm, safe cabin, then back to the broken woman on his porch. He could leave her, pretend she never showed up, or carry her inside and let whatever came next come. He made his choice. She felt lighter than expected as he lifted her in his arms. Her head rolled softly against his shoulder, and for the briefest moment in the porch light, he saw her face clearly. She was beautiful. The kind of beautiful that used to make him believe in forever. And that terrified him more than any outlaw ever had. He kicked open the door and stepped inside, water dripping from both of them. He laid her gently on the couch, the same couch where he'd spent countless nights convincing himself he didn't need anyone. She stirred. For a second, her eyes opened, green, glassy, filled with confusion, and maybe something like hope. Her lips moved, trying to speak, but no sound came before she slipped away again. Malachi stood there, soaked and still, staring at the stranger now in his home. He knew, deep down, this woman wasn't just passing through. Whatever she was running from had led her here. And whether he liked it or not, his life, the one he'd spent a decade building, had just changed forever. 3 hours later, she woke up. The first thing she saw were a pair of steel-gray eyes watching her from across the room. The second, she wasn't wearing her wedding dress anymore. Panic hit like a whip crack. She sat up fast, clutching the wool blanket around her, heart hammering. "Easy," the man said, calm and steady, hands resting in his lap. "You're safe." She blinked. The word didn't register at first. Safe? That didn't exist in her world anymore. To be continued. She swallowed hard, her throat dry as sand. Where am I?" "Wyatt Ridge," Malachi replied, his voice low, measured. "You showed up on my porch last night, in the middle of a storm, could barely stand." She looked around the room. The cabin was simple, wood walls, a stone fireplace, worn furniture, and an old rifle leaning against the mantel. It was warm, safe, and quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the eye of a storm. "You undressed me?" she asked suddenly, a flash of fear rising in her tone. Malachi didn't flinch. "Only to keep you from freezing. I left your clothes by the fire to dry." She looked and saw the soggy remnants of her wedding gown in a heap by the hearth. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Guess the big day didn't go as planned." He didn't smile. "You got a name?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Evangeline." It came out soft, almost unsure, like she hadn't said it in a long time. Malachi leaned back in his chair. "All right, Evangeline, I'm Malachi. Don't worry, I'm not here to hurt you." She studied him. Broad-shouldered, weathered face, eyes that didn't blink much. He looked like someone who'd seen too much, maybe lost too much. She'd seen men like him before, only none of them ever offered safety. This one felt different. Maybe. "I need to leave," she said suddenly. "You can't even walk to the kitchen without falling over. And that storm left half the trails under mud and rock. You're not going anywhere for a while." She pulled the blanket tighter. They'll come looking for me. He raised an eyebrow. Who's they? Silence. He didn't press, just got up, poured a tin cup of coffee, and set it on the table beside her. When you're ready to talk, I'm here, he said simply. Evangeline stared at the steam rising from the cup. She hadn't had a warm drink in days, maybe longer. She sipped it, eyes flicking up at the man who, for now, wasn't asking too many questions. That night, Malachi slept in the chair near the fire, a rifle resting across his lap. She watched him through half-lidded eyes, heart pounding each time the wind shook the window panes. Every sound made her flinch, every creak a possible footstep from her past catching up. But he never moved, just sat there, eyes closed, as if protecting her was the most natural thing in the world. Days passed. She healed slowly, bruises fading, cuts scabbing over. Trust, however, was slower. They didn't speak much, but when they did, it was about the little things. How he used to raise horses, how she liked the sound of thunder, until recently. How people disappear in the West all the time, and sometimes that's not always a bad thing. Then one morning, as the sun rose over the ridge, she finally said it. My husband, he tried to kill me. Malachi didn't react, just nodded once. She went on. He owns men, the kind you don't cross. I ran before the vows were finished. He'll come. I know he will. Malachi's voice was quiet, firm. Let him. Evangeline looked at him uncertain. You don't even know me. I don't have to, he said. I know the look of someone who's been caged, and I know what it costs to get free. She said nothing, but that day she didn't flinch when he stood near her. She even smiled, just once, when he told her the coffee would always taste terrible no matter how many beans he used. There's a moment when survival becomes living again, when fear loosens its grip just enough for hope to slip in. For Evangeline, that moment came on a porch in the middle of nowhere, wrapped in a stranger's blanket, watching a hawk soar overhead. She didn't know what tomorrow held, but for the first time in a long time she wanted to find out. And for Malachi Thorne, the man who'd sworn off love, off people, off everything that ever made him feel, he realized something too. Sometimes the storm brings more than destruction. Sometimes it brings someone worth opening the door for.